Hi, my name is Juan, and welcome to The Couch, a podcast where real therapists talk about real things. Please remember that we are therapists, but we are not your therapists, and this podcast is intended for educational purposes only. All right, so here's a question for anybody in a relationship with a significant other, right? So you're married, you've got a significant other, or you're dating and you really like this person. Here's a question for you. How do you feel? How do you feel when that person is really close to you, right? When they're in your arms, when you're holding them, what is that? What is that feeling? How do you feel, right? Do you feel good? Do you feel safe? Do you feel protected? Do you feel secure? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel scared? Do you feel worried? Do you feel like you can say whatever you want? Do you feel like you can't say whatever you want? Do you feel like you have to be careful with what you say? Do you feel like you have to be cautious with what you say? Now, what I'm getting at is today's episode. Today's episode, mi amigos, which means my friends in Spanish, is about attachment styles, right? Have you heard of that before? It's an emotional framework when it comes to the area of like mental health and relationship therapy. Now, before we dive in, this will not be an entire dissertation on attachment styles, right? I doubt you want me to go all the way into that, and I certainly don't want to go all the way into that. But what it'll be a safe place for you to learn about these attachment styles. And if you're listening and you're somebody in a relationship, or you are wanting to be in a relationship, or you're in a relationship and it's not going great, or it is going great, I think it's going to be beneficial to anyone in those categories, right? Anyone in a category that wants to build a relationship with somebody in a healthy, constructive, lasting, loving, fantastic, wonderful, beautiful, exciting way. At the root of it, when we look at our relationship with somebody else, there's this framework that we can consider that's called attachment styles. So if you've got you and your significant partner, and you think about, let's say, like my kids right now are really into slime. And that's just the example that came into my brain. Now let's imagine that you've got this huge bucket of slime, and it's right in between you and your partner. So then you pick up the slime, and let's just make it really cool slime. So it smells great and it feels great. So you pick up the slime and it smells great and it feels great, and then you're holding it up and your partner grabs some of it too. So at this point you're attached to each other. You got some of it, they got some of it. Attachment's taking place. And then what naturally happens in a relationship is that slime will just move. It'll spread out and then come back in. And sometimes, my friends, when things are heavy, right? When shit is at a bad spot, you'll go from two hands holding the slime, right? You got two hands on the slime, they got two hands, you're attached. And you'll have those days, right, where you're two bulls just really hitting each other, that one of you will remove your hand from that slime. And boy, will you feel the weight of that. And it may get to the point where one hand's left. The other one's got two hands. That one removes one hand. Now it's one hand. And maybe a couple of fingers are removed. Right? So that's a state right there that can happen in a relationship. And then the complete opposite of that state is both hands are in and you're really close to each other, right? So it's almost like you're going into the slime. So what I'm getting at is this framework. This framework teaches us something. It teaches us that when you are in a relationship, right, with somebody else, there's an attachment that takes place. So I like to see that attachment as like that slime, right? Both your hands are on there. And you can just change that analogy to anything you want that may sound a little bit better for you. So both hands are in there, and it's got this slime, and I'm going to pick the flavor. I'm going to pick the smell. I like strawberry. No. I like mango. You know, I am from the Dominican Republic. We've got mango trees and stuff. So I like mango. Mine smells like mango. And my wife likes mangoes. or at least this day, she's definitely going to like them. Now, you've got both hands in there. And when things are going really well, right? When the relationship, when there's excitement and there's safety and all the wonderful adjectives that you throw in, both your hands are holding it and you're locking eyes and you're connected. And then what takes place, as I mentioned before, right? Life is what it is. And life has beauty and life has suffering, right? Life has these moments of deep connection and these moments where you just feel like the other person doesn't understand you. And then that's where you not only remove one hand, but you step away from each other, right? And in that distance, the slime is still connected, right? There's still little pieces that are being held there. It's just spread thin. And we know what happens when you spread thin, right? I mean, you think about yourself. Scratch the whole relationship. Think about you. When you do too much, when you take on too much, and then you say that statement, man, I'm just spreading myself thin. What does that feel like? Does it feel great? No, it doesn't feel good. It feels terrible. It feels exhausting. Right? It feels like you don't want to do anything else. Right? So that's a strain that you're putting on your relationship from both sides. It takes two to dance, after all. Now, when it comes to this attachment style, we got to know that. We got to know that this slime here, it moves, my friend. It moves. It moves depending on how you and your partner move it. That's like the wild card of it. That is not these outside forces that move it. It is those two beings right there and what they bring into it. Now, of course, you and your partner are going to bring internal, external. You're going to bring so much to it. But I've got no control over it. Bob down the street's got no control over it. You two have the control over this slime and the attachment, how close you'll be to each other and when you'll go further away, and then what you'll feel. By understanding, right? By understanding your attachment style, how you attach to somebody else, that supports your understanding of building friendships. That supports your understanding of building intimacy, of building romantic relationships. That supports your understanding of perception, how you see things. The foundation, right? That root of attachment, getting further in there. It's a gold mine. It can teach you so much about how to build a healthy relationship. And then here's something I really like about it. I enjoy attachment styles because it teaches me about me, right? And I mean, that's gold right there. You know, you teach me something about me. I like that. And I'll tell you why I like that. Because if you get to teach me something about me, last time I checked, there's not too many, you know, there's not too many strings that are controlling me, which is great because that means that I have my own autonomy. I'm able to work on me. I'm able to do that due diligence. So I'll share something with you, a quick example, then we'll keep going in. Let's say I'm in a relationship and I have an attachment style where I get a bit anxious, right? And anxious could be where maybe I have a fear or a worry that my partner is going to separate from me, divorce me, leave me, reject me. And I'm always seeking a certain reassurance. So then you sit down with me and you say, Juan, tell me about this feeling that you get. You know, it sounds like you and your partner, you hold on to this slime. And it sounds like sometimes maybe, I don't know, she gets really caught up with work and, you know, she's holding it, but just with one hand. And that causes you to get really anxious. And I go, yeah, you're right. I do get really anxious. And then, you know, this person talking to me, they go, well, what else do you feel? And I go, you really want to know? I go, well, I feel a bit sensitive here. I feel vulnerable here. I feel that there's some things inside I don't like. I feel like, you know, what if I'm abandoned? And they go, whoa, let's talk about that. And next thing you know, I open up and I tell them about my childhood, or I tell them about past relationships I've had where I put 4 feet in. I only got 2 and I put 4 feet in. I gave it 120%. Though I only have 100%, I gave it all. And it didn't work out, right? I was shortchanged. So all of those lead to an interpretation for me, right? The personal interpretation of me having this anxiety. And I have an option, right? I can take all of my past experiences and I can grab them, and then I can pour them into this slime, right? I can pour them into this slime that's connecting me and my partner. So now what's going to happen is there's a likelihood, right, that when my partner maybe detaches a little bit for whatever reason, right? Let's not get too much into that. That's so much. That's right now not the important part. Let's say my partner detaches there for some reason. I'm looking at what's under my own foundation, right? And this friend that's sitting with me, this individual that's sitting with me, they're bringing that to light. They're saying, it sounds like when your partner steps away a little bit, when you're holding that slime really close and they take a step back and they go from two hands holding it to one, and you're left there with two hands, it sounds like you start to feel really anxious. It sounds like you start to feel like you want a lot of reassurance. And it sounds like you feel like they're just going to leave and they're going to abandon you. And I say, yes, you're right. And then they go, how come? And then I say, well, because, and I reiterate the story of what happened in my past. So then they ask me, right, one of those classic magic questions. They go, how do you know the same thing's going to happen? Of course, I don't know. So I tell them, I don't know the same thing's going to happen. And then they tell me, well, you're living as if the same thing's going to happen. And if you're living as if the same thing's going to happen, then what's the point of trying to do these things if you're already going to assume that the same thing's going to happen? Right? And I get it. I get life is not that easy. It's often, it's a whole different ball game providing feedback than being the one sitting there receiving the feedback. And I've been many times on both of those positions. So I share that case example so you can kind of get an inside view of what that anxious attachment looks like. And there's different attachment styles. So that was one example of one. The common ones, and I'll go over these. The common ones is your secure attachment. You've got your avoidant attachment, your anxious attachment, and then there's a mixture of that anxious avoidant attachment. So with your secure attachment, it's probably exactly what you're thinking, right? It's where you feel secure in the relationship. And I'm kind of reusing the word there, so let's not do that. People with secure attachment, they show up in a relationship with independence for themselves, right? They show up with autonomy for themselves and for their partner. This means that they're really far away from codependency. They feel confident when they are with their partner, when they are away from their partner, because there's a security there. Now, you may be thinking, well, Juan, this security has to be built. Yes. And it can be impacted by past experiences in a positive or not so positive way. Secure attachment is seen when people are able to handle challenging conversations without feeling that they're going to damage the relationship. Right? So that's where you and your partner, you're holding this slime and you're right there close to each other, eye to eye. Both hands are holding the slime. And then one of you say, I got to talk to you about something really difficult that's been bothering me. And then you look at them with both eyes open. Your heart starts to beat faster. You feel your heart. You think to yourself, I probably look like one of those cartoons in the black and white pictures where, was it Bugs Bunny where the heart's just popping out? You're like, I probably look just like that. Right? So then you stay there, you keep your cool, and you try to dry your sweat bullets, but you start to feel anxious inside. And that voice comes in, why are you feeling anxious? And you're worried because if the conversation goes in the wrong way, your partner will get upset. You don't want your partner to get upset. Why don't you want your partner to get upset? Because then you'll feel like the relationship is going to go in the wrong direction. Well, let's pump our brakes, right? Because if we're looking at secure attachment, then that whole thing is done a little bit differently, right? Secure attachment would be that your partner says that same initial statement. And then after they say that same initial statement, you then take a deep breath and then you say, hey, we got a safe space here. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me how you're feeling. I'm curious. And then they share with you. We used to go out on so many dates, and I miss that. I miss going out on dates. I want more of that time with you and I. I want us to get out of this rut. I want more time with you and I. And not having it makes me upset. It makes me sad. It makes me feel distant, right? So then you stay in there. You stay with them in that, right? You stay curious. You remove assumption. You remove judgment. You give your partner independence and autonomy to be themselves, to express themselves. And then you work through that, right? So that there's like a nice classic example of how you can still have conflict. You can have a challenging conversation and be able to continue to feel secure in it. Another classic example here of secure attachment. This is where, maybe you're dating and your partner says, yeah, I'm going to go on on a guy's trip to the beach. We're going to go fishing or something. Or I'm going to go on a girl's trip. Just whatever kind of trip. You make one up. And because of maybe past reasons, you start to feel a little bit anxious. Maybe you even avoid those type of conversations and go out. We'll plan that later, because you don't want to get into it, right? Because you're worried that something could happen. So then that one goes into the independence of each other, the trust of each other, the confidence in one another, right? Having that secure attachment highlights that whether you're face to face or far away from each other, there is that level of confidence and trust in one another. Now, so I think with these topics, sometimes it's easier said than done. It's easier said to read a definition and talk about it than to live it. And that's where I go back to one of the things that I enjoy about these attachment styles is they have so much to do with people on an individual level. And as long as you keep that in mind and then you think to yourself, all right, my struggle is in this. Well, that's the first step, right? First step when it comes to many mental health practices is awareness, right? My struggle isn't blank. Now I begin that process of working through it. And often you'll find that you may not even need your partner's help to work through some of these challenges because they're so personal to you. And that's a big light bulb moment there. The other two that I mentioned, you got your avoidant and you have your anxious. So anxious attachment, here's some ways to kind of look at it. You feel anxious when facing relationship challenges. So that could be if your partner maybe sends you a message, says, hey, we need to talk, like that classic statement, right? You're just sweating bullets. You're getting anxious. You're thinking something's wrong versus something's right? We need to talk. I won the lottery, right? I think no one goes in that direction. Another one is you have a hard time with jealousy, right? So that anxious attachment can bleed out and be seen by having a difficult time with jealousy. You often want to feel very close to your partner when they're not there. You feel anxious about the stability of the relationship. So you kind of have this little neat mixture here that you pull your partner in to feel close, and when they're not in, you do not feel close, right? So to calm your anxiety, you bring them in, and that's the part I want you to think about, right? When you have that anxious attachment of I want to feel good, so I bring you in. So then the question comes, how can I feel good without bringing you in? How can I feel good and accept where you are at? Because we also want to pose the other question. Does my partner want to come in every time to help me feel good? If we go too far in those directions, we can start swimming up the wrong or climbing up the wrong ladder, right? The ladder of codependency. Here you seek attention in the form of physical closeness or words, maybe reassurance, which reassurance is not necessarily a negative, right? So it could be you get dressed, you got an outfit on, and you say, hey, what do you think about this outfit? How am I looking, right? So it's a sense of reassurance you're seeking there. Sense of maybe like validation for the state of the clothing and how you're rocking it, if you will. This goes into more of let's say we have a spectrum, and you're going too far in that spectrum, right? Where you're seeking it to calm that emotional feeling. And if you don't receive it, your anxiety is growing, right? That anxiousness is growing. Avoidant attachment. We'll shift over to the last one here. And again, as I mentioned before, this is a big topic when it comes to areas of relationship support. The attachment theory, it's a big pool. No, it's an ocean with lots of bodies of water. So we're literally in one, and I find that if you discuss these topics and there's way too much that you put into them, at some point you go, well, where do I even start to work? So here, my encouragement to you is to look at, hold an understanding of what attachment styles are, kind of have an idea of what the purpose of them is, and then have an idea of these core ones. You've got your secure, that's the one we want to go towards, your anxious, and then you got your avoidant. Now, in case you were wondering this question, I think I have this one, but I'm not 100% sure. I think I may need some help. Right? That's where counseling comes in. Reach out to a counselor. Within a couple of sessions, you can start having conversations about this, and then there could be a laid out structure on how to move forward. Avoidant attachment. You have a hard time trusting your partner and others. You keep a distance from others. You keep a distance maybe from your partner. Now, why do you keep that distance? So that you will not get hurt. And here's the thing, though. With this slime, if you are wanting to build secure attachment, the obvious is that you have to come close. Right? Hold me close. How can I build a secure attachment if I'm far away from you? So I got to be close to you. We got to hold this slime and we're close. Now, when I'm engaging in avoidant attachment, I am keeping a distance to not be hurt. And this is where, right, you're kind of sabotaging the process, if you will, because if I keep a distance from my partner, it's the same as me building a wall in between us. And now that I have this brick wall in between us, how am I supposed to feel close to my partner? Right? Because I get that the brick wall is there so that I don't get hurt. But if I am building the brick wall, it's serving multiple purposes. One is so that I don't get hurt. The other is so that no love grows. At some point, I have to ask myself, what am I deserving of? Right? I'm deserving of love. So then I have to build that strength and empowerment to remove that wall and get comfortable, if you will, with that closeness. Avoidant attachment. You avoid intimacy with your partner. Avoidant attachment. You steer away from deep moments that have to do with vulnerability. Right. So some of those there are some of the characteristics that have to do with the attachment styles we're discussing. What I want you to think about is which ones stuck out to you. Right. So some individuals with, can kind of give you a little bit more here. Some individuals with avoidant attachment, they may show up in a relationship being a bit more distant, emotionally distant. Right. And that's why at the end I said that lack or that struggle with vulnerability. Right. So often individuals with avoidant attachment, there may be that distance emotionally. There may be that uncomfortable sense, if you will, when it comes to intimacy. So some of those there are just important, like characteristics to kind of keep an eye out for. From here, where do you go? Right. What is the next step? So again, a lot of this has to do with self-work. And as you notice some of these, if you're like, oh man, I got all the avoidant one and the anxious one. Love yourself. All caps, bold, underline it. Love yourself. Love yourself, my friends. Right? You are where you're at, but that doesn't mean that where you're at is going to be where you're going to be at tomorrow. Hopefully that's not confusing. Right? Love yourself. If your plan is to heal, if your plan is to grow, if your plan is to get better, to improve, you've got two options on how you're going to do it. Right? Two clear options. Option one is you're going to do it by treating yourself poorly. Option two is you're going to do it by treating yourself with compassion, with kindness, with love. Choose option two. Right? Most individuals I meet, including myself, there's items of anxious attachment. There's items of avoidant attachment. There's some speckles in there of secure attachment, and these are on a personal level for most individuals. And you think about why. Well, why is often not as complicated as it should be. Why is our past? How many people in your life do you know that you're able to think about them and their family history and look at a completely healthy, non-toxic, right, And again, completely healthy lineage, right? From them to their parents and their grandparents and so forth and so forth. Right? Often that's rare. Right? Often it's rare. So that means that influence takes place. I always like I think it's the analogy of the crayons. You get a crayon and you've got, you got a box of them, and then you pull one out and you got your coloring paper, and then you pull out the red one maybe, and then you crack, break it in half, and then you tell the person in front of you, it's broken. I can't use it anymore to color. I wanted to color this page red, but I can't. So then the person in front of you, right, it's a 10-year-old kid, and 10-year-old kid grabs both of the red crayons, puts one on each hand, and starts to color the paper red. And then this moment happens, right? The moment of still works, right? We're not broken, right? We still can move forward. We can progress. We can heal. We can be and aspire, to move forward and to achieve the goals that we may have. So my hope is that you found this topic on attachment styles insightful, helpful, and if you notice that there's some of that anxiousness taking place in your life, some of that avoidant taking place in your life, that there's steps that can be of help. Those steps that can be of help is reading on the topic. And I forget the name of the book. Let me pull it up. I think it's like a simple name, Attachment Styles, and it's got like a heart on there. Yep. So there's a book called it's called Attached. It's got a heart. Some of the outside is red, the inside is white, and it says The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love by Dr. Amir and master's level Muslim clinician Rachel. So that one I've ran through it a while back, and it had some really good nuggets in there. So I think that's a neat one to check out. As far as working with a counselor, of course, you can reach out to my office, Santos Counseling. We will do our best to support, and if for some reason we get stuck, maybe you're out of state or something like that, we'll do our best to try to show up as far as helping you find other resources that are maybe closer to your area. Hope that you found today's episode helpful. If you've got somebody in your life that you think could benefit from listening to the talk today on attachment styles, share it with them. Keep rocking. Have a great day.